There is a primal scream rising on this planet, and as many would argue, from this planet. Think of it as a boiling point of pain and disconnection, a culmination of disappointment, if you will, that we are unwilling, or even more concerning, that we are incapable of closing the gap between knowing better and doing better. In my work with young people, I hear a common refrain: I'm not suicidal, but I'm not sure I want to be here anymore. This is a clarion call that something's got to give. The New York Times refers to this slow death of the human condition as a pandemic of loneliness. Mental health practitioners refer to it as a crisis of global proportions, leading to ever-increasing rates of suicide, self-harm, addictions of all sorts, violence against others, and a population increasingly dependent on mood-stabilizing drugs just to function. Bottom line, we are struggling to exist in a world our nervous systems were not designed for. To exist in a perpetual state of fight or flight is the greatest theft of our human experience. We're being robbed of our potential to live a life of peace and harmony. Is there a way out of this path of self-annihilation and mutual destruction? I believe there is. My hypothesis is that if we are willing to go to school on our wounding, to remove shame and blame from our past, to find grace in all that has come before, and with even greater courage apply a lens of love to the present moment, our future can be radically and beautifully different from our past. Our failure to learn from our past forever binds us to the suffering of our ancestors. Our inability to meet this pain with compassion and wisdom is a key point of frustration for many. That frustration is the catalyst for this podcast. The Primal Scream podcast is an ongoing conversation with ordinary folks who have met their primal scream head-on and turned it into a powerful catalyst for change in their lives. They've stepped away from the performative expectations placed on them by their family and/or society, despite encountering resistance from within and external constraints along the way, leaving behind both the trauma of their story and the trauma drama that often ensues. Change is hard, but as these beautiful humans share their stories, we learn the intimacy of change is the opening to a life well lived. If you are feeling the existential dread of being alive on the planet at this time, you are not alone. If you're exhausted by the simple act of just being here, you are not alone. As you listen to these storytellers reveal their raw and real journeys to wholeness, it is our hope that you will find courage to do the same. Is there one message to take away from each of these podcasts? I believe there is, and it is simply this: you are not crazy, and you are not alone.
Hi, welcome back to the Primal Scream podcast. This is Edie Osborne. I'm here with Julie Ruckenstein. And Julie is a dear friend over the interwebs. We've never actually met face to face, skin to skin, but we've definitely met heart to heart and spent the last few years walking the path together through some really hard times, through COVID and isolation and some challenging aspects of both of us that we've gone through. And Julie quickly raised her hand and said, "Primal Scream, I'm all in." So let me start with that, Julie. When I say the words Primal Scream, what does that mean to you?
Wow. Well, it is the very sound from our deepest core that is just dying and needing to be heard. I went into some places with it, and I also realized it can also be a huge mistake that when you push the button and you're sending an email to someone and you wrote something you wrote something insulting or disgusting down, and by accident you sent an email to somebody that you weren't planning on, and you're like, oh my God, no!
Right,
That
right.
could be another really deep, concerning primal scream. Um, and but if everything, if I bring everything to ground and to core, to center, it's really about what is going on inside of me. And if there is something there that I have not allowed in my voice to share with whomever in my life, could be my parents or my significant other or friends, or are you listening to me? Do you hear what I'm saying? Uh, and emotions that just, you know, emotions that we we
Repress,
thank you.
we hold down. Yeah.
Overwhelmed, yeah, that we repress.
I wonder, have you ever experienced? I mean, I too have pressed send at a moment when I shouldn't have pressed send, and then and then you scream at the circumstance, right? Because there's just no changing
There's no
once it's beyond your control.
There's no going back. And it's interesting because I've been sitting here and I've been doing a lot of writing and reading for our interview, and something came through in midst all of this and I had to reply, and I pushed the wrong button, and I thought to myself, oh my God. And I went into a complete mindfuck with myself, which was really interesting. It really triggered me what happened, because I went into this whole mind, oh my God, they're going to think I'm, that all of this old stuff started to come up
Yeah.
around some emotional sides with my father, with my mother, some things about relationship and around money and I thought to myself, oh my God. And I became this little girl. I went into this huge process. I couldn't believe how I was processing. And I had to take some breaths. And then I really felt like, okay, I really do need to go and have a primal scream right now. And I couldn't do it here because there are a few neighbors around. So I got into the car and I went to a place here in the country where I know there's nobody. And I just got out and I was sobbing and I just let out this. I couldn't believe what I had done. And then, slowly the energy subsided, and I calmed down and I came back and I was asking, God and Goddess for praying. Maybe the email wouldn't arrive there. Let's let's I was like, let's let's lift our magic here. Let's create some magic. Please, email, don't arrive. And I was looking, and I just went into a place of trust instead of this panic, yeah, because it was like there was this panic. And I always remember my father used to say to me, the main thing is not to panic.
Don't panic.
So I just calmed down. And as I calmed down, I started to realize that I was just playing this trick on myself, like this such old, I don't know what word to use other than stuff.
Well, old pattern, old script, old reactionary pattern that, when we feel out of control, when we're in panic mode,
Wow.
that eruptive,
Yes. It was
yeah.
intense. It was intense. And I sent an email to a friend of mine who was connected to them. And I said, hi, how are you doing? I said, can we have a call? I wanted to, let him know what email I had sent out, and it was completely a mistake. And he said, "Oh, you don't worry about it. So it's okay." And they understood. They were even on the other side laughing, like they understood it had to be a mistake, and it wasn't about them, but it was something that I was writing. I pushed and it went, when you have too many windows open there on your screen, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Close all those prompt windows happening. So the interesting part of it is when I came back and I came to center and I grounded, I realized that I had just been playing this trick on myself and they were fine and everything was okay.
You brought up a couple of points that in all my conversations so far with people about their primal scream and the notion of it, two things really jumped out at me as I remember once I was on my way, I was traveling from a part of Pennsylvania to New York. I had a rented car and I had to get to the airport in time to return the car, fill it with gas. And somehow I ended up on the Pennsylvania Turnpike going the wrong direction. And there's no getting off the turnpike. Once you're on it, you go for like 25 miles. And I'm literally screaming in the car because I am gonna miss my flight and I'm on my way to another speaking engagement. And I remember that feeling of where you have no control over what's happening in that moment, except your own reaction to it, right? And I had another 25 miles to go before I would get turned around and back on the road again. And you also said you went to a very young place, and I'm as I'm doing this podcast, this concept of primal scream is blossoming for me. It's showing up not only as a personal story of mine, but also what a powerful messenger it is in our stories. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can relate to having that sense of being out of control as a child and that panic as a child. And that's why when you experience these primal moments, it takes us back to those moments of
Yes.
being completely out of control and subject to whatever is in the environment.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Takes us to a young place.
Yes. Yeah. For me, it takes me to that place where my parents were were arguing. They were arguing a lot, and I was alone. Yeah, no brothers and sisters. And they would, they were arguing as long as I can remember. Since I'm a child, I don't have that many, good memories as a child growing up. And I was almost always waiting for, okay, well, when was the shit going to hit the fan? When were they going to pull that carpet out from under me? And there's this, there's this energy perhaps that gets locked in our actual cells, in our system as children. Even if we're in our mother's, bellies, we can feel what's going on with them and they can feel what's happening with us. And I grew up with that as a very young child, never knowing and feeling completely out of control. I remember when my parents told me they were going to separate, and it was almost like, they sat me down and they said, look, we have something to tell you. And my heart sunk into my stomach, and I actually smiled, like this nervous smile, because I knew what they were going to say. It was bizarre. And then they told me what they told me. And, there was lost that feeling of not being able to control that situation, that primal situation, actually.
Yeah.
That's there with, with your parents. It's a deep wound.
I was interviewing somebody yesterday and we both could relate to, and I think your description fits this well, that as children, we saw our parents not really living up to their role and responsibility as parents. And even if they were trying, there was some point at which Courtney and I were talking yesterday, and she said, I just kept looking at them going, when are you going to grow up? When are you going to be the grown-ups? Where are the grown-ups in this story? And I think so much of the primal energy that's rising across the planet right now is that very young part in all of us, the innocence in all of us that is waiting for everybody to fucking wake up.
Together. Yeah.
Can you relate to that? Like, and I think it's created a narrative in my life. It's informed my choices every step of the way, that I wasn't going to be one of those grown-ups in the room that was asleep. I was going to figure this thing out. Why is it so hard to do the right thing? And I always say that consciousness, we have so many words and languages and stories about what it is, but for me, it's just closing the gap between knowing better and doing better.
Right.
And when we know better, we do better. I have no doubt about that. I really believe that when people know better, they will do better, because it is innate in us. It is so much a part of our moral compass down in our cellular makeup to do the right thing, that I have great faith in humanity that we're getting there slowly, painfully slowly sometimes. But at the same time, in the meantime, there is this primal energy rising across the planet.
Yes.
And I know part of your story that you spent many years in Brazil. Am I right?
Yeah.
And sang the Icaros
Yeah.
in ceremony with grandmother.
Yeah.
And so one of the thoughts I had and experience I've had of primal scream was in a medicine space, and I was screaming, full on screaming, and then another woman in the room came and met me in that scream. We were all in a ketamine experience, illegal. I just want to put that illegal ketamine integration experience.
Right.
And 6 of us were on ketamine. I am at the same time. And so her scream met my scream. And then all of a sudden it morphed into a song. And we were singing together. And it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a note that came through, but a harmonic convergence of our voices rose to the top. And I did not know this woman, but afterwards she goes, well, that was a ride. And we talked about how I screamed at her. She says, at first I heard the scream and thought it was me. Then I realized it wasn't me, it was somebody across the room. But then I was realizing that I too had that scream in me. So I met your scream, and then it turned to song, and we said that together. Well, she sings the Icaros, and she goes, I felt like I was in a level of Icaros singing with you that wasn't melodic, but it was harmonic. And I think so much about the times I've sat with grandmother where the music of the Icaros has been as much a part of the medicine journey as the medicine itself. And so I'm curious about this. I have this notion that our primal scream will reach a point where it morphs into a communal song, that we will meet each other in the scream and find each other on the other side in a song. And so where does that land for you with all of your experience singing the Icaros? You were there, what, 10 years? 12 years?
12 years every winter, between 4 to 6 months, yes. And yeah, absolutely, Edie, what you're saying is 100% true. Because when we are together in that beautiful circle of trust and light and white, and we are singing those Icaros, all those beautiful songs, we are, that is another form of a primal scream, as it were. But it's with the light, and yet still you have, some people who cannot stay in the moment with the book in front of them and they need to be laying down or they're processing in their way. And the songs that we're singing there, the music is what is actually keeping everything lifted up and together.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. So, yes, it's see you soon. uh it's there are different words, there are different melodies, there are different tunes, and
Frequencies.
it-
I think
right,
we're meeting each other in a particular
exactly,
frequency, a healing frequency.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the frequencies are they're potent, they're real, they're
Yeah.
actually, the tone of our voice. If I remember going into a place that where I wasn't feeling completely safe with myself, or I wasn't in a good moment, and I would start to sing and my voice would I couldn't sing properly. And the more I felt comfortable and just free and safe to be able to express myself, the more my voice, my shout, my throat would open. And I mean, it was incredible. The heights that were reached in those moments. And when you're in those moments of those heights, I mean, I've seen a golden curtain open where I was just shown the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful frequencies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And angels and nature and energy. It was like everything was energy. And when we trust and when we surrender, leave it to anything in life. I mean, the ceremony is a metaphor for the ceremony of life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And how we come to ceremony, maybe how we're going to have that, we have to have our intention clear, and those songs. I have some of the books here. I mean, I sing every day, and there's one song, it's so beautiful, it's just coming to me. Ciranda 41, Ciranda 41. And this is, sing for me, my little bird. Sing your song for me. Sing for me, my little bird. Take me to your world, to the sun, to the moon, the stars beyond the sky, to the sun, to the moon, the stars beyond the sky. So this is one of the English songs that came from a German friend. We sing Hebrew songs and sing Brazilian songs and Sanskrit and Diva Primal and Ida Wera Wera Nita Shomo. Ida Wera Wera. Ida Wera
Weather Splendid Shun. Need a weather.
Wera. Ochakini ba Nita Shum. Shake, shake.
Shake. I love that when we go to ceremony, people come from all over the world and they bring their lineage with them into the medicine, into the music, and the geopolitical ancestral boundaries just softened into nature, into Pachamama, into the medicine, into that frequency of oneness. We remember we come back into that remembrance of who we are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Exactly. Because there are no words actually that you can use to describe. I mean, there is this, there are wonderful words. We can look in the dictionary and we can try, and there's one beautiful word. It's called, it's called swelza, this word. That is one word that I can use to describe the circle. Swells. Have you ever heard of this word? Swell. It's Spanish, so it's part fuelchi and sueldo. So it's luck and it's power and it's luck. And there's a force behind this word swelza. And there's so much beauty and power and force when you're in circle with grandmother, especially with all of the different icaros, because one song can come in and completely raise the vibration of the circle, and then another song can come in and it can really get you where you need.
For those who don't know much about ayahuasca, it's she's often referred to as the plumber. That grandmother comes in and certain songs are designed to help the plumber move the dark matter out of our bodies through whatever means is available and appropriate for each person. Sometimes it's through sweat, sometimes it's through shaking, sometimes it's through purging, sometimes it's through diarrhea. I mean, the body releases, and the songs are there to bring that frequency into our bodies to support the work.
Yes.
With the medicine. Yeah, they come together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it can be through tears, it can be through laughter, it can be through shaking. You need to regurgitate and to get well. It comes out from the other end, or it could be from whatever it is. You feel so much better. You've released, and then it's that much easier actually to come together, as humans, come into the reality. Okay, what did we just pass? What just happened there for all of us? And we're so much lighter. And what's really interesting and I find hilarious is that when people speak about going into a session like that, they're like, oh no, or any type of session, whether it be heart or spirit or mind, they're like, okay, well, I didn't throw up, or I heard that I'm not going to actually throw up. With certain heart medicine, everybody thinks so, relaxing and loving, and it's going to be so yummy and juicy, and you never know. Sometimes I've actually went very, very deep and had a cleansing on a heart flower, which I was amazed at, and I felt so much better after. It was like such a release. So there's nothing. It's just funny how people are,
I know those people. I was one of those people at first before I'd ever done ayahuasca. It's like, oh, that whole concept of purging does not sound appealing. Why would you put yourself in that position? And yet, I agree with you that we carry so much trauma, our own. Like I think of trauma in 4 layers. There's what happened to us. There's the trauma of our lineage, what happened to our parents, our grandparents, and so on. There's the trauma from society that I know you know this very well. They've seen the epigenetic changes from those who are Holocaust survivors and their lineage, and Ashkenazi Jews carry a different trauma signature in their DNA, and Armenian have a different from their cleansing. So, I mean, and I know that we carry it. So it's my personal trauma, it's my family's trauma, it's what society has imposed on my lineage. by the set and setting of my parents and grandparents' birth and so on. And then there's the planetary trauma, what's happening with Pachamama right now. And
Right.
all of that is weighing on our vibrancy of our bodies, right?
Yeah.
And so our cells are damaged or suboptimal, leading to cancer and autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses at a level that it is quite alarming that I see statistically our death rates are going up and our life expectancy is going down.
Yeah.
And you would think by now we would be clever enough, smart enough, wise enough, self-aware enough to learn
There's
from the past.
there's too many idiots out there. I'm sorry for lack of a
Well,
better word, but they're just people who are not who are not doing the work, and I
so here, can I soften that edge? My daughter teases me all this. She says, Mom, you're always trying to soften the hard edges. They're idiots. And I go, yes, I get it. I know it looks idiotic the way they're behaving. Their patterns have led them to this place where they refuse to see the trauma as part of the imprint on our story right now, and they want to blame and shame others, and our whole political system is designed for gamesmanship, and survival is all about gamesmanship around resources and food and shelter and all that to say that in the grace that I was gifted the day my mom died, and I was shown it all, at least all that I could absorb in my cells, that everybody is doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have at that time, and a willingness to learn more is our greatest problem right now, is we're unwilling to learn. And I think part of that is because, well, I know it is because our imaginations were damaged at the time our innocence was taken. Our dear brother, Armando, that we love so much, who's taught me so much. And I remember once I was struggling. I was deep in the dark night of the soul work, where you're coming out of this need to blame and shame others. Why did my parents do that? You stop looping around why, and then you go inward. You do the deep inner work to find the patterns, and there's the trauma, and then there's the trauma drama that you've allowed to become your identity and your story along the way.
exactly.
And he looked at me and he said, when did you lose your innocence? He says, go there, start there, find that place. And when you find that place where you've lost your innocence, you realize your imagination was intact at one point.
Right.
And you were able to perceive and grow and change and look at change through a lens of curiosity rather than resistance.
Right.
And I think, one of the first questions of the healing conversation is, are you ready to have a healing conversation? And so many people were like, what do you mean ready? Like they felt
Your body
attacked.
language right away is like,
What do you mean? Right.
Yeah.
And others were, of course, like, yes, of course I'm ready. But then I realized there's a willingness component to, are you ready, willing, and then an ableness component. And some people, and I had an ableness component for myself too, that was so deeply skeptical, deeply wounded by my childhood trauma, that it was really hard for me to even perceive that my parents were not acting out of malice. They were acting out of their own level of unconsciousness. But once I understood that, then all of a sudden I had just grace for all of it. So what seems idiotic, and then I know you know this too, where we tend to other others when we see these behaviors, I go back to Armando's comment to me, which was, when did they lose their
Yes.
innocence, and try and meet them in their innocence. And I think that's why I love the work that I get to do so much with people. Is my whole task is to help people reconnect with their innocence, to leave the skepticism behind, and the cynicism and the projection and the blaming and the shaming, and step into this lens of love that you can take it all in, even the man's inhumanity to man, what people call evil. I don't perceive it as evil. I perceive it as separation from self. I mean, you think how far removed you have to be from your center to actively hurt other people. So we have a lot of work to do on this planet right now. And I feel like the primal scream is a part of that conversation, that there is this energetic anxiousness, frustration. Some people would refer to it as an existential dread that they're feeling about the state of the planet, the state of our human condition, the state of our systems. It's this moving from a scream to a song is a really interesting little shift lever in my mind. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Because you've experienced it, both the scream and the song. What's the lens that offers that transition for you, or that transmutation from transcendent place, from the scream to the song of the universe?
Yeah. Well, I'd have to say that right now it's a difficult time. It's not an easy time to remember. We just need to remember who we are and where we come from. And it's very important to connect. In order for us to connect to ourselves, we really do need to have more connection to nature. I believe it's that simple. Yeah. And having these kind of conversations with friends and loved ones where we can remember, okay, we're not alone, and we can come back to co-creating, because it's definitely a huge metaphor of what is going on in the world right now on the planet, to then how we're feeling in with ourselves. And there are many moments where I just feel the planet shaking, and I will just start to, it's like a wave just rolls over me, and I'll just be in tears suddenly. I'm very emotional that way, and I'm water sign. I'm very watery. I have Cancer, and my moon is in Scorpio, and I'm very connected to the water, and it's, we just have to have the trust. We have to have the faith. We have to remember that it's up to us, and we need to come together. We can't do it alone. That's another point. If we're too much in our ego and busy with all of the bullshit that's going on with our everyday life, I mean, come back to your breath, take some time in nature. There's so much wisdom in Pachamama, and
I'm wondering, Julie, if you'd be willing to share, if you can go to this tender place with me. When we first met, you reached out to me because you were going through a pretty dark time. Your mom had passed away, and you were very, very isolated in the middle of winter in Montreal, and snowbound. And that seasonal affect disorder had definitely become an issue. But I mean, I remember one of our first conversations, you were really at such a dark place, a really dark place.
Yeah.
And I know when I've been in those dark places, I tend to want to isolate. I tend to want to not be a burden. let my feelings be a burden on somebody else. And yet it's only when I'm willing, here's that word again, to be vulnerable in a circle with other people that I began to navigate out of that. I'm wondering how you were able to navigate out of your darkness, because somebody's going to be listening to this who's sitting in a very dark place and who's going to wonder, oh, they're all, rainbows and happiness. But no, we both have been in those places where you're not sure you want to be here anymore. It's hard. Can you go there and talk about that?
You want me to share about how I was feeling in that dark place?
And
And
yeah,
how I came out of it? How I dealt with it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah. I was in a place where I couldn't see out through the other side. I was very deep in this hole.
yeah,
And fortunately, because of all of the work I've done in Brazil and all of that beauty that was shown to me, there's always this little voice that would come, sit very gently on my shoulder and remind me, don't forget your connection to the divine. Don't forget your connection to the divine. And I've had that since I'm a child. My parents would be fighting, arguing, and I'd be with my head out the window and looking up to the sky and looking outward. Has to be something more than this. There has to be something more than just what's happening here in 3D. There has to be something else that's actually tangible rather than what's happening. And I've had so many beautiful encounters and beautiful experiences that somehow I learned in that dark place, in that dark, very, very lonely. I was lonely. I was isolated. Really? Is this my life? Is this it? Is this it? I mean, I thought about, heading over to the other side plenty of times, knowing how beautiful it is over there. So, but I mean, never really going to that place of doing something about it. And having conversations with friends, with people, also helped to pull me out of that guck, out of that place, out of that mud, and having the support from people like you, be able to have conversations with like-minded people that get it, that got it, and uh, I had a lot of support from our friend, from Armando.
yeah,
He was very, very present with me during all of it. And it's good to have a reminder. And my dog, Zaya. I mean, Zaya was like an angel that came from over the mountain over here and landed here to be with me. And yeah, you just sometimes got to take things, if it's not day by day, you take things moment by moment, and you just stop and you breathe, and you remember that this too shall pass, and can go out in the nature and go take a walk in the nature, and whatever you can do to stop your mind, play with music, practice your guitar, sing some songs, paint, draw, talk to people, reach out. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
yeah,
This is pertinent because I mean, I grew up in a way where I was a strong one, and it was very difficult. Nobody ever taught me that it's okay. You're allowed to be vulnerable.
Well, I want to punctuate how important what you just said is, that a trauma pattern that comes out of a traumatic childhood is hyper independence, hyper competency. Like, I've got this. Don't add. I can handle everything. And in fact, that can often lead to us not being willing to ask others for help, because our pattern is there was nobody there to help us. So we became hyper independent. But when I find myself, and I have that similar pattern, when I find myself going to this hyper independent place, I now recognize the pattern and go, oh, wait a minute, that's an old story. I don't have to have all the answers.
No.
And I think it's really important, and I love and admire this about you so much, Julie, is your willingness to heal out loud, to speak your pain out loud, and not in a way that makes anybody feel like it's a burden. It's an invitation for others to own and speak their pain out loud. If I could, as we begin to sort of close this conversation a little bit,
It's crucial,
it's absolutely crucial.
especially in this time. It's crucial
Yeah,
because there are so many people that we
yeah,
think it's usually the stronger people who are always okay and who
right,
do not ask for help. There's so
right,
many people who are suffering out there, like
yeah,
incredible. It's just to bring themselves to this demise. It's just we need to allow ourselves to be true, whether it be
right.
to ourselves inward or outward. And yes, it's a crucial time right now. I mean, there's so many people who are going through hell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's extreme.
So that healing out loud, that primal scream that wants to happen individually and collectively right now. One of the things that I find, as you say, is getting out in nature and coming into community, creating spaces for people. That's one of my husband's and mine. Our whole world now revolves around creating spaces for people to come and have that vulnerable, safe place where they can share, and there's no judgment. There's no, um, I was sat with grandmother several years ago, and she said, you need a sacred witness circle around you. And a year later, I had done just that, created a circle of friends that were all going through their dark night of the soul work. And we shared, and we shared our curiosity about what was on the other side, even though we weren't sure. It was, when you're in the middle of it, it's not always easy to understand what's on the other side of it, but to share our imaginations possibilities for a healed human condition began to lift each of us up. And so a year later, I'm with grandmother once again, thanking her for that beautiful wisdom to create a sacred witness circle. And my own naive language of that was, it's the least we can do for each other. And instantly grandmother came back and said, no, it's not the least we can do. It's the greatest gift we can give to each other, to be a sacred witness to each other.
Yeah.
Especially when we go to that very young place where we have lost our innocence and we are in that completely dysregulated state that was the feature of what happened when we did lose our innocence. To be witnessed in that and held in that, it's to be able to help co-regulate another human who has never been that seen, held, witnessed before, is the greatest gift we can give each other.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's profound.
It is. It is profound.
And I appreciate how willing you've been to let me witness you, and that you've witnessed me as well, sister.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, there's a beautiful synergy and a beautiful feeling, comprehension between us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, maybe you've heard of his name. His name is Dr. Bernie Gunther. He was one of the original founders of Esalen Institute off of the Big Sur Road there. And he created these cards and all these little books. And I'm working on some of the projects I'm doing right now are with reference to him. He was such an inspiration, such a funny man. And he used to play with words. And one of the cards he had says, move out of the hole and into the hole. Right? And another one, which was nothing lasts.
Right. Right.
So when we're in that dark night of the soul, or we're so isolated and we just feel, and we're deep in that hole, and we cannot see out through it to the other side. I always remember, there's this saying, that the only way out is through.
That's right.
The only way out is in. And we're not taught in this day and age, and in this
construct that we exist in.
We're not taught that it's okay to be vulnerable. We're not taught that it's okay to go into that place of feeling scared, of feeling what it is we really feel, and not masking. If you go to another culture, so we're, in this culture, it's all about playing the game. And
Right.
it's just a game. That's what people really need to remember and to remind themselves. Like, sometimes I'm sitting and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm in this movie. I feel like I'm completely tripping. And I'm just from life, just from nothing. I'm completely tripping. And then I remember I am.
We are, right? Right.
It's like I am, like how Armand creates his diagrams there, and in the center of it, it's like, I have them everywhere. It is that I am.
Right.
And
one of his greatest teachings to me was that it's all meaning making. It's all meaning making. And I took that to heart. And I remember being in front of a group last year speaking Women's Visionary Congress and saying, we're making all this up anyway. If you're going to make up a story about this human existence, why we're here, what we're here to do, how we got here, what happens afterwards, because we have no clue, right? It's just all the mystery. If you're going to make something up, make it a love story.
right.
Make it a story where everybody wins at the end, where everybody comes out whole, out of the hole, into the hole. And through that lens, you begin to engage your intellect and your intelligence at a level of creation that manifests a different world.
Exactly.
Right?
And what is another definition for creation? Change. If you're not willing or able to change, how are you going to be able to create? Creation is change. It's action in motion. It's yes, yeah.
And I think, just to finish this off, that the primal scream is a messenger of change. It's a messenger of enoughness. It's a messenger of rage. It's a messenger of hope. It's a messenger of potentiality, that we can move that big energy through our bodies, through our throat chakra, out the top, and blow out the brain. Blow it out. And I welcome it. And I welcome the primal scream. I'm not afraid of it now. I was when I was a child, because I was afraid once I started screaming, I would never stop. But now I understand it is a threshold.
It is
of potentiality.
Well said. Yes. And we have to remember that through that, there's so much beauty. even
Yeah.
through it all. There's so much
Yeah.
beauty out there on the other side of
Yeah.
what we need to get through right now. There's so much beauty and grace and harmony, and even through, you know, the journey that we're on, it's not about the destination. It's also in this journey and learning how that this primal scream can be of such beautiful value for so
Yeah.
many of us. And, you know, sometimes with certain people, we have to share the message. You're talking about the messenger, the primal scream being the messenger. It is. Sometimes we have to gently with certain people, and because it's strong. It's intense
Jarring.
when that
It's
wells up inside of you.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
you
It's
just want to like, I mean, wow, what an intense emotion, and it's invaluable that it's yes.
well, the beauty is to bring it up and out rather than direct it at others. And
Exactly. Yes.
that's my hope in these conversations, is to help people both connect with the rage and the righteous rage and the anger and the frustration and all those feelings, and understand that they are a messenger and not a missile
Right.
to be shot in the direction of any one person or process, for sure. My sister, thank you
Yeah.
for being part of this big conversation. I love you so much, and
Sweetheart. Thank you.
may
Well,
may it be so.
mm,
All the goodness that we
yes.
shared tonight.
Oh.
Oh,
Thank you for joining us for the Primal Scream podcast. We appreciate your willingness to sit in the pain and exploration of a fellow human. It is our hope that you found a thread that you can weave into your own story going forward. There is great beauty on the other side of the primal scream. A wise elder once said, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And we are not waiting any longer for someone or something to shift the human story from fear to love. It's on us to redeem ourselves from our individual and collective unconsciousness, to find our ease of beingness. The future belongs to those who show up. We'll leave you with the song Like the Children Do by Meredith McHenry. She reminds us that the way home is the path of innocence reclaimed. See you on the next podcast. Have a beautiful day.
Put down your armor, I'll put mine down too. We'll do like the children know how to do. We'll fill up a pail with the pain they caused you. We'll pour it all out like the children do. Don't get me wrong, you can't walk over me, but I'm strong enough to hold you when you're weak. I know I fucked up and you sure have too. So let's just start over like children do. Can we just go back to the time before our innocence was stolen? I don't know how to get us there, but I'll keep hoping. I'll keep hoping. We can do like the children do. I'll open my bleeding heart to you. Let's just pretend for a minute or two that our hearts can bend without shattering through. We'll find that forgiveness as if we're brand new, and you'll walk through the fire like it can't burn you. Back to the time before our innocence was stolen. I don't know how to get us there, but I'll keep trying. I'll keep trying. Children do. We can do like the children do. I'll open my filthy hands to you. Can't we do like the children do? Can't we do like the children do? 'Cause I don't want to say goodbye to you. Put down your armor, I'll put